Hi, today we're just going to briefly talk about the process of renouncing your citizenship. Um, in the process of renouncing your citizenship, there's really two obligations that you need to do in renouncing your citizenship. One is the administrative side, and another is the income tax filing obligation side. With the administrative side, you're basically going to be filling out you're going to be contacting your U.S. Embassy and you're going to be making an appointment. Prior to the appointment, you're going to need to fill out some forms for your renunciation, and generally, depending on where you live and what country you live in, the appointment wait time for your first appointment could be weeks to months. But when you go to your first appointment, that's when you're going to be doing your interview with them, and you're going to have to bring the forms in as well that you filled out. And then in addition to that, there's going to be a second appointment. And then during the second appointment, you're going to have to bring your passport and pay a fee. And then after that, they will be mailing the summary of your interview and the documents you presented to Washington, D.C. as for them to review your renouncement request. And then there's also the tax filing. You have an obligation with the tax filing to file Form 8854, which is known as the exit tax, and you will need to do a dual status tax return as well. To talk a little bit more about the two different obligations you have to do, which is the administrative side and the income tax side. Let's dig down just a little deeper about the administrative side. It's going to require a couple of interviews, filling out some paperwork, and bringing some documents, basically. But there's going to be a list of documents that you're going to need to bring. You're going to have to fill out some embassy forms, and you're going to initially need to call for your interview and set that up. So then you wait really, and then what happens is you go to the first interview. You got to be very careful in that first interview process. We will guide you through how this goes and be prepared on what you need to be truthful, but what you really need to make sure you present to them. And then you will be bringing the documents that they requested you to bring, and you're going to be bringing your paperwork. And then they're also during the interview process, they're also informing you a lot of things, let you know what a privilege it is to own or to have U.S. citizenship, and also the consequences of giving that up. And then what happens is you do not renounce in your first interview. They literally want you to go back and think about what they told you, and they also want to, during your interview process, they want you to think about the reasons that you're renouncing, because they are going to be submitting the documents and everything to the for the request. So what they're basically doing is they're releasing you. They ask you to think about it and call us up for the second interview. Basically, they want to make sure that you know what you're doing, this is what you want to do, so on and so forth. During the second interview, that's pretty darn straightforward. At that point, you're bringing your passport, a few other documents, and a check for the fee. Currently, the fee is $2,350 to renounce. And the interview is basically going to be raising your right hand during this interview process, giving up your passport, and walking out on the administrative side, no longer a U.S. citizen. Then at that point, after that second interview process, you basically are sitting and just waiting. You're just waiting and waiting because they're basically summarizing the interview, preparing the forms you prepared, and also the documents that you're required to bring. They put the package together, sending it out to Washington, D.C. It basically has to get approved through there. And then if you get approved, you're going to get a certificate of loss of nationality that will come to you, and that's your official document on the administrative side. But you're not done yet. That you technically aren't a U.S. citizen, but you still have income tax liabilities and you still have tax obligations. And if you do not complete that side of it, you still are obligated to report your worldwide income, report your foreign financial accounts, and continue filing income taxes. But in order to get out of this obligation, you, one, have to be tax compliant. You're going to have to fill out a form 8854, and you're going to have to do a final tax form. Now, in order to be tax compliant, what you need to do is have filed the last 5 years of your tax returns and has filed the last 6 years of your FBARs. And if you haven't done that, you may want to consider going through some amnesty programs that are available to you. They have what's called a Streamlined Offshore Procedures program, where you can get into compliance without getting penalized for not filing this stuff. So it's advisable and encouraged that if you don't meet those first two obligations I just mentioned, we may want to get you into one of these, the Streamlined Offshore Amnesty program, and get you in tax compliance. And then also, in addition to that, you're going to have to fill out what's known as an exit tax form. You could be subject to an exit tax if your net worth is over $2 million or your average income tax liability is over $162,000, and the averages look back over the last 5 years. If you meet any one of those two obligations, you could be subject to exit tax. But the other thing is, you still have to fill out Form 8854. How does the U.S. government know that your net worth is below $2 million? How do they know that you're that you haven't filed, or you filed your last 5 years of tax returns or 6 years of FR? So you're required to demonstrate that you don't meet these obligations and that you're tax compliant. There are boxes that you need to properly check and sign off on this and demonstrate that you're not subject to any taxes. So this form does need to get filled out regardless of your situation. This is one of the forms that is required to check out of the tax system. And if you have not filed your last 5 years of tax returns, you are going to need to do that first prior to filing this form, because you don't want to check no, because if you check no that you haven't filed your last 5 years of returns, then you're not tax compliant and you're not going to be able to check out the tax system. So this form cannot be filled out until you're tax compliant first. And then the last thing that you're going to do is, let's say you, for instance, for simplicity's purposes, you went to your second interview at the embassy on June 30th. So what you have to do in the following year is do your final tax return. In the first 6 months, you have to report your worldwide income as you are a U.S. citizen. And then in the last 6 months, all you have to report is your U.S. sourced income as a non-resident. But in order to officially let the U.S. government know that you do not need to file a tax return again, you have to file this dual tax status tax return. We file some additional documents letting them know that you don't need to do this. We put in a very detailed explanation of what you've done with some backup documents. And at that point, when they receive that, that would be the last tax return that you would need to file going forward as a U.S. citizen. But if you have U.S. sourced income, you will still be obligated to file taxes. Now, what can we do for you? How can we be of assistance for you? From the administrative side, we will fill out those required forms that you need to hand to the U.S. Embassy. What we're going to do is advise you on the interview process. What we do is approximately between 2 to 3 business days prior to your interview, we have an interview and go over the interview process. In addition to that, we're here for consultations, phone calls, emails, whatever you need. We are going to review the documents and the forms prior to you bringing them to the U.S. Embassy. A lot of the administrative stuff is straightforward, but there are a few tricky items that you need to watch out for. And in addition to that, and that's the meat of what we can offer you, is that we can make sure that you're in tax compliant and you've filed the final income tax obligations or the tax obligations. one of the things that we do is we always have anybody renouncing, even if they haven't filed their last 5 years of returns, we're going to have you go through the streamlined process. But if you have filed them, we're going to have you give us your last 5 years of returns. We are going to review those in detail, make sure you're fully compliant. I just have crazy stories during this process. I had one fella that was paying taxes in Canada and the U.S., and he was sick of paying in both countries. When I got his 5 years of returns prepared by a high-end professional, he did them completely wrong, screwed up the foreign income tax credits. We were able to go back 10 years, amend his returns, and we got him back between $5,000 and $8,000 per year for the last 10 years. And all of a sudden, he reconsidered renouncing his citizenship, knowing that he wasn't paying double taxes, and he ended up not renouncing. We have another fellow that had a Big Four accounting firm do all his taxes, so he was sure they were right. But when we got him, we did a little test called the Foreign Earned Income Exclusion Test. You can take it. It's optional to take it and not take it. We found out that he was taking it the wrong way and saved him a lot of money. We went back last 3 years and filed that. We have other people that we look at the returns, think they're compliant, and we find mistakes and we find non-disclosures. So we need to clean those up. In addition to your 6 years of FBARs, we prepare your exit tax form. We will prepare in the following year your dual status tax return and get that right. Make sure we include all the required documents to check you out of the IRS system. It's very important that you check out of the IRS system properly, because any loose ends or anything improper, and then it comes back and bites you in the butt. It's because you didn't properly exit the tax obligation properly, and you have some loose ends, and you want to avoid those at all costs. But in summary, just to give you a little bit history about myself, we're a small firm with a few employees. We keep busy with very, very minimal marketing or a little marketing here and there. And we keep busy all year round helping individuals getting into tax compliance, staying into tax compliance, doing annual tax returns and FBARs, helping out with renouncing. And that in itself, we do a lot of streamlined submissions where individuals have not properly filed their prior returns or made mistakes in their prior returns to report worldwide income, and that's what we specialize. So I encourage you to give us a call after seeing this brief slideshow, and we do not charge for any consultations or phone consultations as you're thinking through the process. If you need to call us multiple times as you're thinking about what you want to do, we don't charge for that. We only start charging if you become an actual client of ours. So during this process, thinking if you should renounce, not sure about this situation, that situation, feel free to give us a call. We'll guide you through your questions. Thank you.